All right, let's try to shoot this video real fast. All right, like I tell people all the time, you live inside the new heaven and new earth that was prophesied in Isaiah 65 and 66, as well as Revelation 21 and 22. You live inside the new heaven and new earth whether you believe me or not. The entirety of biblical prophecy has been fulfilled. You are awaiting the fulfillment of nothing, okay? So I try to introduce it like that. Nice light intro, right? Ideally, or eventually, I'm going to link these videos. Ideally, eventually, these videos are going to be connected to the articles that I'm writing on lastdaysrevealed.com. I do have the link for the site down there. Several articles already there for your reading and enjoyment, I guess. I'm writing several articles. I've written several. I think I've written like 3 of them even this week even. So, I mean, I am keeping up with the writing. But I've got other people that are editing it. I've got other people that are helping me with the site and how it's presented and things like that. People more knowledgeable about such things. So there's a little bit of work as far as correlating that out and getting these videos matched up with the scheduling of the posts. Like, for instance, I think the post that's going to come out tomorrow is Abraham's land inheritance and how his descendants have already received it. It's a long fulfilled biblical prophecy. But I already made a video about that like 2 months ago, so I don't want to make another video about it now. I'll just, plan it better in the future. 2 months ago, I didn't know I was going to be writing all these articles. So going along with the same line of thinking, like I tell people all the time regarding biblical prophecy and how it's all fulfilled, the biggest issue in the Bible is imagery language. And this past week, I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about this, and it's not all the way developed, but we have a strangeness that's come to us, the modern believers, the modern readers of the Bible as well. And I guess what it is that the Bible's a translated work, okay? And the toughest thing to translate is probably a figure of speech. Even if you get every word perfectly translated, it's going to be very difficult to convey the meaning. Like, for instance, if I say that, hey, last night it was raining cats and dogs, and someone took that phrase, translated it into French, and wrote it in a book. I don't know if people in France know that phrase or not, but just for the example, if someone was to read that in France and they would read what I had said translated to French, that it was raining cats and dogs, if they don't know it's a figure of speech, or if there's no note to explain that it's an idiomatic statement, that person may know it according to the context of their reading. That's really my argument. But if they don't know it or they don't catch it from the context, they may actually really believe that I was saying that last night literal kittens and puppies were falling out of the sky, which of course is not what I mean. I just mean it was a big rainstorm. This is the exact problem that we deal with inside the Bible. People will read phrases like heaven and earth will pass away, and they'll say, well, this is the same sky that Jesus walked on under. This is the same ground that Jesus walked on. Thus, heaven and earth has not passed away. So we're still awaiting this to happen. That's a figure of speech. That's an idiomatic statement. It's not referring to the actual planet passing away. There's other instances where you'll read phrases like the sky will roll back like a scroll. And a person will say, that's an unfulfilled biblical prophecy. The sky hasn't rolled up like a scroll yet. We're still awaiting that. Or the elements are going to burn with fervent heat. Well, the entire planet has not been burned up in fire. Thus, the prophecy is unfulfilled. These are figures of speech. I'm going to be coming on the clouds, for instance, or the coming of the Lord. That's the big one right there. I just had a great conversation about this coming of the Lord like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I never really had internalized just how difficult this problem really is for people. I hadn't really noticed it. And I guess that's the direction I'll take this in, is it's still very fitting. When a person thinks about the coming of the Lord, the way they think about it is that Jesus is literally going to come to them. Like it says that everyone will see him on the clouds, or he'll come on the clouds, or in the same fashion that he ascended, so he'll come back, without noticing that this cloud imagery, this coming imagery, you need to think about these phrases according to how they're used in the Old Testament. I mean, Hebrew Israelites in particular should really know this, being that we're the ones that say all the time, all scripture is given by the inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine. And according to the context, we see that scripture is really referring to the Old Testament scriptures. So every phrase that you see in the New Testament, like coming of the Lord, these phrases need to be understood by how they're defined in the Old Testament. You see, because the people that are living in the New Testament are living against the backdrop of the Old Testament. They live in the Old Covenant. These things are these phrases, they got to be judged by the text. The Bible, 80% of it is the Old Testament, okay? You have to take these phrases and compare them about how they're used in the Old Testament. And this doesn't get done. It just doesn't really happen at all. So take the coming of the Lord, for instance. The view is that every person is going to see Jesus coming out of the sky. And when they see him coming out of the sky, then he will have come. This is not a message that is presented in the Bible at all. You're aware, of course, that in the Old Testament, God comes all the time. There's examples. I was just reading one in the Torah portion like last week where he says, I will visit you, or I will visit this person. There's examples in the Old Testament, I kid you not, where God says, I will come and see you face to face. He doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean he's physically going to see a person face to face. You have to understand that the coming of the Lord is the bringing of action. It's the bringing of significant action on the earth. He's God. He doesn't need to physically show up for anything to happen, And it's a misunderstanding. It really is. But again, it's a misunderstanding because we don't live back then in the first century in Jerusalem. We don't understand that these are figures of speech, idiomatic statements. So this kind of gets into a bit of an uncomfortable area about what I've been kind of thinking about for a lot of the week, which is that we've created a new religion. I got to be kind of careful how I say this because I really haven't explained this before. But in so many ways, if a person says, that I'm going to be coming on the clouds, for instance, the modern reader just says, oh, well, I see clouds up there. He's saying that God will be on those clouds. But if it's idiomatic language, it also could just be coming in rulership. I'm coming above you. It's not detailing literally riding on the clouds. You're aware, of course, in the Old Testament that God rides on a cloud. I think there's an example. I think it's in Isaiah 19. Man, I hope that's right. I think it's in Isaiah 19 where it says that God rides into Egypt on a cloud. And if you think about it, the Psalms and how often in the Old Testament you see God coming on a cloud, you should really consider that against the New Testament statements where it says that Jesus is going to come on a cloud. You got to compare these things. But if you don't compare it, what else is a person supposed to think except for it's an unfulfilled biblical prophecy in which we're awaiting a man to literally come on a cloud. But by doing this and now thinking or now believing that it means that Jesus will literally come on a cloud, literally we'll be seeing him coming on a physical cloud. By doing this, you believe a thing that no one in the Bible believed. We have in effect created and are practicing a belief structure that did not exist in the Bible. This is extremely peculiar, and the depths of the oddity are unknown to me, but I sort of feel the ground almost opening up underneath me, so to speak, when I start to notice how odd this is. The people in the first century that heard these statements like Jesus is going to come on the clouds or he comes riding on a cloud, they instantly understood that that is not talking about a literal person riding on a cloud. No one believed that. But the modern reader, we're entirely disconnected from that reality. We're reading a translated text. How are they supposed to convey to us that it's a figure of speech? So we await him to come on the clouds. We are awaiting a figure of speech, idiom, hyperbole, imagery language to literally manifest, which of course is foolishness. I don't mean that with the harshness of the word foolishness. I don't mean it harshly, but you would agree that a person saying it's raining cats and dogs does not mean literal cats and dogs are falling out the sky. So you're aware of imagery language is not literal. If a person is saying that it will be raining cats and dogs, you're not expecting puppies and kittens to fall out of the sky. You're expecting a rainstorm. So it is with Bible prophecy. I'm going to wrap up with a quick example. Everyone knows that Jesus is the light of the world, okay? So think about this. Jesus is the light of the world. Go to Revelation 21 and 22. You'll find, well, specifically Revelation 21, you'll find yourself in the new heaven and new earth. Now, the details regarding the new heaven and new earth, it shows that there is a place where there is no need for the sun, no need for the moon, and there's no night, but all the light comes from God. Do you get it? Do you see the imagery, language, connection, and how the Bible prophecy is fulfilled? Mind you, this is new heaven and new earth prophecy. Do you see how it's fulfilled? God is the light of the world. The people walk in the light of God. It's not saying that we're going to go to a place, a new planet, where there really is no sun, no moon, 24 hours of light all beaming off of God. You live in that place right now. It's imagery language because Jesus is the light of the world. That's the difficulty that we're up against. To be thus putting forward the message of we're going to go to another planet where there really is no sun, no moon, but light actually beams off of God. Every one of us is sitting at our homes thousands of miles away, reading the light, reading a text, reading a book from God's light that he's shining to us from Jerusalem. That's not what it means. And I think if a person can understand that and can see that the light that's being referred to is not talking about actual light that you need to physically see, then they can understand how the prophecy is fulfilled. Gosh, I really hope that makes sense. Site is lastdaysrevealed.com. Ideally, I will be able to schedule these videos, match them with the posts going forward, hopefully started next week. So there you go. Shalom.